So if you've been following the news lately, you know that China's been hit with another 10% tariff from the US. So if you have an e-commerce business and you mainly source from China, what should you know to avoid these tariffs or just to stay on top of the market so that you don't affect your bottom line? If you're new here, my name is Michael. I've been living in China for 6 years and I'm heavily involved in the procurement business in China to help businesses cut through the barriers of finding Chinese suppliers, dealing with payments, dealing with logistics, and just streamline the whole process. So welcome to the channel. This is your first time. So let's talk about some of these tariffs and how it may affect your business. The first one I want to talk about is the most recent one that came from the White House. It's fresh from the press, February 1st. And you can see that the biggest impact is that it has an additional 10% of imports from China. Now, I don't make the rules, nor do I control the politicians or have any influence on the politicians. My mindset is that you just focus on the controllables. What can you control yourself when something like this happens, whether it's a government policy or something that you have no influence or control over? How can you just maintain a stable business? Clearly, the reasons behind this specific tariff may be temporary because it seems like it wants to reduce the threat of aliens, drugs, and including the deadly fentanyl. I don't know much about this, but I think this is just putting pressure on the countries of China, Canada, and Mexico so that they can come up with some kind of policy or action plan to reduce the amount of traffic coming into the United States. But again, I can't tell the future and I can't control this. So what does this mean to you? Unfortunately for your business, I personally believe that when situations like this happen and they just put a blanket tariff on everything from China, then the cost is mainly going to be borne by the customer. And this is a typical example of inflation where they increase the pricing, whether it's from procurement, shipping, or tariffs, that ultimately the customer usually pays in most cases. Although it may be a bump in the road where they want more manufacturing to happen in the US, again, just focus on the controllables. So with this, you can just include a 10% tax inside of a profit calculator. This is a profit calculator I made from scratch for two kinds of businesses. One is for drop shipping, as in you buy one product and you drop ship it over to your end customer. In this case, we're talking the United States. Or another one is B2B, or bulk ordering, as in you buy inventory, let's say over 100 units, and then it goes to some kind of a warehouse in the USA, Amazon FBA, for example. Or if you're just starting out and you're testing the market, it can be from your own home. There's no shame in that. And you can go ahead and put the products in. So let's just say I have a Chinese product that is worth 100 yuan and it's 3 kilos. The shipping from the factory to the freight forwarder or your shipping agent, let's just say it's 10 RMB. The international shipping could be quite expensive. Let's just go with 150 RMB. I'm not saying that's the specific case. I'm just throwing some numbers out here. And then everything in yellow, just so you know, needs to be filled out by you. Everything in green is the outputs. So here's like the biggest change is that you would just change the import tariffs. In this case would be 10%. Then warehousing costs, if you have any, if you are doing drop shipping, you may have. And then the profit margin you want. So you can't get as greedy as you want with the B2C, like the drop shipping method, because customer may not even want to bear that cost or it might be too expensive for the customer. Whereas you can kind of get greedy when you're doing the bulk order, but you're taking on more risk. With the drop shipping, it's less risk. With the bulk order, it's more risk. So here, if I want to maintain a 30%, or let's go with even 40% for a product that cost me 100 yuan, I would have to charge the customer $130 up front to maintain a 40% profit margin. Now, whether the customer or not is willing to pay for that, that's another story. But this is how you can protect yourself to make sure that no matter what tariffs are put in, you account that in your pricing model and actually charge the customer the right amount. In this case, I put a shipping cost. It's more expensive than the product. That actually happens quite a lot in China. People really underestimate the cost of shipping. Like, you're shipping a good from another country, like literally overseas, that's got to go either via boat or air to the country that you're doing business with. You can imagine there's costs involved with that. So it's going to get quite pricey and it's seasonal. But as mentioned, if you want that profit calculator as a tool, if you're just starting out, you can download it for free in the description below. What are some other kind of loopholes or ways that you can overcome these issues with tariff? Well, if it's an overall blanket tariff, it could be difficult for absolutely everything. But do know that on most products, if it's valued under $800 right here, you won't have to pay import tariffs for. Now, whether it's for personal use or business use, I'm not customs consultant here. I usually work professionally professionals that know the customs and regulations a lot more than me in the USA. I just do this from experience, but I know if you report that the goods are less than $800, in most cases, you don't have to pay any tariffs to the United States. So if you're selling a product for $1,000 to the end customer and it costs you $300, $400 to procure from the supplier in China, you won't have to pay taxes on that, and you don't have to put that extra 10% to the end customer. Now, I do have to note that this $800 exception, it can be product specific, and this goes into my next point that the US imposed a 100% tariff on electric vehicles. The reason for this, there could be many reasons for this, maybe to encourage the manufacturers in the US to produce more EVs, because me living in China, specifically I live in the city of Guangzhou. This isn't based on statistics that I researched online, just by living here generally. It seems that about 20 to 30% of vehicles here are EVs because they invested in all the taxis and any public transportation, they have to be EVs. And if you didn't know this, if you want to get a car license, like a license plate in your car in a major city, like a tier 1 city, it can cost a lot of money up front, like $5,000 to $10,000 just for the license plate if it's a gas operated vehicle, or you just win a lottery that they host every month, and if you get a lottery number for that month, then you get a free license plate. Or if you buy an EV car, you get a license plate free. And that's very important because that license plate number, this may not be effective for those of you that in America, is just a fun fact that with that license plate number, that determines on what cities you can drive during rush hour and all that. So like, for example, if you're watching this from the US, if you have a license plate from Miami and you go to New York City to drive with that license plate, you will be fined if you drive during peak hours, like from 7 to 9 a.m. or 5 to 7 p.m. on the weekdays. So it's very important. The license plate here is a big deal, but I just want to explain some of the reasons of why there's so many EVs here, and they're also super affordable. Let's just look at the end cost of a Tesla right now in the US. Okay, so I just did a quick search of the newest Model 3, and it's around $30,000. You can get a decent EV in China for about half that price. So you can imagine how, not necessarily a Tesla, there's plenty of EV companies in China, so you can see it's quite affordable to have an electric vehicle here in China. But why does it matter? Like, how does this affect you? Well, if you're in the business of EVs, that can be a generalization. Now, again, I'm not a tax attorney, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a customs broker, but if you think about it, a vehicle is something that you can ride. I'm sure there's a specific definition for it. And if you're in the business of selling not just cars, but let's say motorcycles, or I guess it's just like electric bikes, then this can potentially affect your business if that is what you are selling in the USA. So something to consider, that these taxes are very product specific, and depending on the product, just be very careful when you select your product that you're trying to sell in your current market, and do the research on the import taxes that you may need to pay. Because if you're selling something that's EV related, you can buy secondhand EVs here for quite cheap. If it's something that you want to get into, just be careful and just know that there's probably going to be tariffs included. I personally wouldn't try and sell the EVs in the US because it is a pain in the butt to get the product from China on a boat to the USA. There's a lot of paperwork that goes with it, mechanical reports, it needs to be properly inspected by the state. It's ridiculous. Another tip to kind of overcome these tariffs that may be coming and going with this new administration is stay in touch with professional freight forwarders or shipping agents that have done this shipping business for a while. They have special channels, they have direct contact with customs officers to see what is allowed and not allowed for import taxes, and they can kind of guide you if you use their services to actually get your products through. In some cases, not even paying import tariffs, or at least paying the minimal amounts. I've worked with several freight forwarders, and I can tell you that some are absolutely awful. I have one that I had to work with from South America, and they were the worst freight forwarder I ever worked with in my life. And that is saying a lot because I've worked with multiple freight forwarders. This is one of the laziest companies, and I'm not sure how they're still in business. I'm not going to blast their name out, but just be very careful about finding the freight forwarder. Make sure they know clearly the import duties and regulations, that they have channels to do the proper reporting. For example, if you're shipping goods to Europe or an EU country, are they familiar with the IOSS system? Do they know how to do the proper reporting of the cost so that when the products actually arrive to the end destination, then there are no issues with local tariffs? Now, if you want to know exactly how to find that perfect freight forwarder for your business, check out this video right here.